Hello there, and welcome once again to the High Performance Human Podcast. Your man Andy here, and this lad I've known for a little while now. And I tell you what, watching this guy grow and evolve in the way that he has and in the style that he's done it is pretty damn cool. Josh Klein is the managing director of Social Status, starting the organization in 2015. He's also the founder of Promoter as well, that started out in September 2019. Josh is, when you say the words go-getter, I suppose that could be probably thrown out there a little bit too much. And I think it just tends to get generalized a little bit. But the way that Josh goes about his business and the way that he goes about his life is one of genuine happiness. And the smile that he has on his dial is an infectious one. It really, really is. And aside from anything else, he's damn sharp between the ears. So, Josh, a very, very warm welcome to you. How are things going?
Fantastic, mate. That was a very kind introduction. I feel you share almost all of those traits with me. So glad to be here and connect and chat.
Well, I'm really looking forward to this conversation because you are, for me, you're a really, really good example of what can be achieved if you have a bit more of a singular focus on how you want to get there and have that, not obsession, because that can be detrimental, but you have that determination to want to do well. And I think it's shown in your organization, Social Status, which is a 20-person strong organization now. So you've been going from strength to strength. I mean, 9 years, pretty much, all by the shouting. So, mate, before we crack on, though, because I've got a few things I want to pick your brain on. For those that don't know who you are, give us a bit of an elevator spiel as to who Josh Klein is and what got you to this point.
Oh, all right. Where to start? I'm Josh, the director of Social Status. We're an almost decade-old social media company, which is quite rare in our industry. What got me here? Born and raised in Melbourne, entrepreneurialism ran in the family, was a terrible employee as far as punctuality and purpose in any job I had. So starting my own business was the only logical step. Bit of help from the old man. Started walking into cafes near my house and asking if I could run their Facebook page for $100 a month, and the rest is history. So we are a social agency. We run Instagrams and Facebooks and TikToks and LinkedIns and whatever else is next to come onto the sphere. And we make content for real estate agents and fitness brands and gyms and international corporations. And I love my job. I get paid to sit on Instagram and post memes.
And play.
And pretty much, which honestly, I know you do a bit of too.
Look, man, I that's one thing that I love about the way you go about it. You clearly enjoy what you do. You clearly enjoy what you do in terms of the functionality of Social Status. You said that you were an awful employee. What jobs did you have?
I worked for my dad when I was young and got fired, which at the time I thought was abhorrent, but in retrospect, it was a life lesson I sorely needed.
Brilliant.
Cafe, Foot Locker.
How were you at school? Were you similar at school? Did you struggle to maintain attention or anything like that? How were you at school?
Average student, 70 enter score, B pluses across the board, like to skip class and talk shit. I wouldn't say class clown, but somewhere between average student and having a good time. Just was never studious. I did university for 4 years of what was meant to be a 3-year degree, and I dropped out at the end. I hate regurgitating textbooks, and it took me 20 odd years to work that out. The opposite of a great student for sure.
Yeah, fair enough, man. Fair enough. Now, Josh, we always ask every single one of our guests this next question. Now, I firmly believe that high performance, to be a high performance human, contains 4 elements, being success, connection, influence, and happiness. I'm very interested to hear what your version of a high performance human looks and feels like.
I like your matrix of elements, but that's probably not. I think I have a more simple version. I think there are two types of people in the world. I call them plain builders and plain flyers. And there's just a certain mindset of which I kind of feel like you have it or you don't in a lot of ways. Of course, things can be learned and developed, but I think it's my definition of success. Is that what you need?
Definition of a high performance human. So success is an element of it.
Okay, high performer, somebody who can see an outcome and work out how to get there. I think that the plain flyers get caught up on the obstacles. They're not sure there's a problem. We stop, and I do it too. I call it self-sabotaging. But I think the balance of how much you can overcome obstacles and problem solve, and when you think you've got a plan and the wheels fall off, your ability to still make it to the finish line, as opposed to people who have excuses and problems and they don't get there. So to distill it, I think that the definition of performing at a high level is getting to the outcome no matter what.
Interesting. So determinations, like I mentioned, is a key thing for you, and something that like I've mentioned at the top of this, I recognized in you, and I keep recognizing it in you. The dedication that you have to your craft, and what you mentioned about the fact that having a social media business for nearly 10 years. It's a rare thing. I think that's a really good example and a good point and a good thing that highlights your determination to want to do well, right? I think because you're absolutely right. Social media firms come and go like ships in the night, right? They come and they disappear very, very quickly. So for you to build your organization to a 20-person strong biz, and how old are you now? 35?
Yep, as of last week.
So you started when you were 26,
correct?
And tell me, as a 35-year-old in charge of 20, in charge of a strong squad of 20, how do you find that?
That's probably been some of the biggest career learnings I've had. I think a lot of people who start a business think getting clients or making sales or marketing or whatever will be the key part of it. Obviously, you can't get there alone. So hiring and retaining and engaging and nurturing people has been probably the biggest learning and challenge for me. And I've made more missteps than correct steps. I decided to just do it my way. I'm lucky I have a bad cop in the business, which is a dramatic term. My GM is just better at having performance reviews and giving out written warnings when they're needed and those negative combos. So I think I do it my way unapologetically. I enjoy having fun and being myself. I don't like yelling or trying to manage outside of my gears. And then I also just have I guess hire people who are good at the stuff you're not. I have an awesome GM who kind of cracks the whip when it needs to be done so I can be the good fun boss.
It's interesting and very similar to a conversation I had with Jonathan Ball. He has a pretty similar mindset. He just likes going out there and playing. And then he has an offsider who is the nuts and bolts, the attention to detail guy.
I think it's a common business dynamic. I think almost all companies have the visionary and then the technical guy. And the technical guy doesn't want to be the face of the company and famous on social media and speaking at events. And the visionary could think of nothing worse than having to sit down and work out how to connect your internet to a new NBN provider or some technical, you know what I mean? Weird example, but we just switched.
Yeah, no, I mean, you can relate that to pretty much any element of your life, right? Whether it's business, whether it's sport, whether it's love, whether it's relationships,
totally.
All of that. That's that ability to really complement each other's strengths and weaknesses, and making sure that when it's your turn to take a back seat because it's not what you're good at, then it's really, really cool. And like, it does apply to relationships in a big way, right?
Totally. More than anything.
You've got a significant other who's a nice strong character as well. Was that her in the background?
Yeah, that's Rebecca.
So Rebecca, so would you say that you have a similar sort of relationship with Rebecca with respect to your approach and Beck's approach to life?
I would definitely say that self-awareness is a key trait to have. And so, as a roundabout way of answering is I know what I'm good at, what I'm not. And then for sure, Beck is better at things I'm not. She's our head of content and creative. So I get to go and pitch the big, fun, crazy ideas. And then she puts them together with her like unmatched skills. And working with your partner is something that I recommend and enjoy, but that also throws some minor challenges and spanners in the works. So
what happens? What happens if you have it? What happens if you have a disagreement? Is it ever been taken home?
Yeah, for sure. Geez, I didn't know we'd be going this direction so soon, Andy.
Right.
I got a real short memory with that type of thing, as in we could have a fight this morning and then by lunchtime I've already completely forgotten about it.
Right.
Which I think is a good trait to just by chance have. So I don't hold grudges for long at all. I'm a very happy, have a good disposition. You can cut me off in traffic. You could yell at me over the phone. I'm all good. Like, as long as,
Interesting.
I can keep moving.
Now, I want to dig into that a little bit because you mentioned there you've got a pretty short memory when it comes to arguments and so on and so forth. Like your business mind is clearly, it clearly has to be good for you to have had some of the success that you've had and are having, and your ability to connect with people on a business level, on a personal level is obvious, because I think some people can try and be too happy.
Sure.
I know that might grind on some people when so you can't have, there's no such thing as too much happiness. You can if it's bullshit. You can if it's not legit happiness.
I heard a term positivity washing. It's when people
is that what that is? There you go.
Just forever positive when sometimes negativity is needed.
Exactly, or pragmatism is needed, right? But the way that you tend to roll, it's obviously legit. Now, you mentioned there though you have a short-term memory when it comes to arguments. You have this inherent ability to be able to let go of conflict, essentially, right?
Yes.
Where do you think that's come from? Because that's a pretty important trait to have, I would have thought.
I just thrive on energy. Like, you'll never see me happier than if I'm having a great conversation or and just living in the moment is my absolute favorite thing to do. So I kind of seek that in all areas of life. And I'm sure you would agree that if you're on a roller coaster, you're not thinking about the fight you had with your misso last week. So, I don't know. I just like to try to seek energy and fun and excitement and new opportunities. And that makes it easy to not dwell on, problems from the past.
Interesting. So, yeah. And I think that really does something, the fact that you do very much live moment to moment. You're very much in the moment with a heck of a lot of the stuff that you do. And I pay that as entirely as a compliment. Now, having said that though, you're an ambitious cat as well, right? You've got some ambition. You got some lofty goals, right? Before we hit record on this, the term billionaire was getting floated around. I know it might have been a little bit. I know it might have been a little bit tongue in cheek, but that sort of goes a little bit of the way to, and you need that, right? If you're going to build an organization, you've got to have some ambition, right? So
Sure.
You mentioned that you like living in the present, but how much does looking out to what could be achieved, how much does that bring the energy? How much energy does that bring to that sort of thing that you need?
Oh, yeah. This is where my character kind of flaws and traits start to run deep. So I grew up in a relatively wealthy area and community, Brighton, in Melbourne. And so I was surrounded by people doing well, of which my father was someone I look up to greatly. He passed away 5 years ago. So I just find that firstly, my baseline for where life was meant to be lived was a pretty high bar that I just assumed I needed to get to. And secondly, like I like to just walk around. I just get inspired by success, whether that's looking at social media posts. I think we all have that kind of FOMO jealousy that gets created by seeing people who are just kicking ass and putting their highlights on social media, which I think it's important to remember. They're posting their highlights, not their day-to-day. But I'm very much motivated and inspired by seeing other people's success. And that has put a dog in me that just keeps grinding to get there. And I notice I'll talk to other people who are more satisfied with a more mediocre trajectory. And I kind of just am like, what? Don't you want to do better, get more, buy a house, live your dreams, kind of have total freedom? Like, isn't that so important to you? And they're kind of like, no, look, as long as I'm happy and healthy, I don't get too worried about it. There's something in me that just forever has needed and wanted to get to the top of the kind of social status. That's my company. Timely point. So yeah, I don't know where it came from. Just that one's deep in me. I was born with my goals, and lucky for that, because being consistent over a long period of time is shit. It's tough. It's like going to the gym or anything where you're trying to quit smoking or just whatever. So obviously, if you've got something kind of deep driving that, you'll get there. And if you don't, then you're really going to work hard.
Yeah, man. I one thing that I want to pick up on that one is something that a lot of people that they struggle to understand that they can achieve high performance in themselves because of them being a product of their environment. Now, you've said the other side of it, right? You can be a product of your environment in an entirely positive way as well, right? You had the good fortune of being raised in a good area and all that sort of stuff, and with the right influences around you. And I really wanted to talk to you about influences as well. So it's good that we've segued into this. You mentioned that your old man was a really strong influence on you. So what did he do? What was his?
He ran a market research company, surveys and questionnaires for big businesses. Maybe the good guys would engage his company to interview 10,000 customers and say, what was your shopping experience like out of 10? The price, the customer service, the parking, like kind of that market research is the industry. Yeah. And he did very well for himself for 20 years. Yeah. That's what he did.
And he was always he had that sort of entrepreneurial energy, headspace, all that sort of stuff as well.
Well, the interesting contrast of the point you were just making is that I am the first to acknowledge I've come from a good place that was a huge leg up. Obviously there's an argument in society over, well, you're not doing well, why don't you just work harder? But sometimes people's, foundations or influences are poor, so they have to, adjust from that. So I was blessed to have great surroundings that made me want to achieve and match those. My old man came from shit. He was born in Dandenong. I think his old man nicked off pretty early. So I look up to him even more, knowing that he came with no mentorship, no entrepreneurial guidance, no peers that were succeeding that he wanted to match their level. So yeah, he had some magic in him.
And you talk about people's wiring and whatnot, when they're wired from an environment that isn't likely to cultivate high performance, success, achievement, any of those sorts of things, rewiring yourself is a tremendously difficult task. Now, you being a leader of 20, how, when you mentioned there that some of your biggest lessons have been through the managing of people and whatnot, have you found that sometimes because your energy is at the level that it's at, and it is a consistent level as well, there's absolutely no issue, no question about that. Do you find that sometimes as a person that does operate at that level, sometimes it can be quite difficult to connect with others that have come from other circumstances, other products of other environments, and therefore they have an inherently different energy to them? I mean, obviously that would play a part in how you hire, in how you recruit, obviously. But like you said, having the same energy across the board can be tremendously detrimental as well. Like imagine you trying to manage 20 U's. Like, it'd be impossible. So tell me, like, what lesson, when you talk about the lessons that you've learned when it comes to managing people, what lessons have you learned about yourself around when it comes to accepting some people's different energies?
Yeah, good question. I think not looking down on people or up or sideways. I think, empathy is a great skill to have in that respect. I think I've learned don't think that team members are friends at all times. I think, it's easy to assume that everybody's buddies are looking out for each other, and then it really hurts your feelings even if it's warranted, if a team member who you really get along with goes and gets another job for another 10 grand a year, and you're like, oh, what the hell? Like so I think kind of recognizing that business is not friendsness is something my GM says.
Yeah.
And then I suppose there's a dark side of any relationship, but an employment one where you have to terminate someone because they're letting you down, or they feel they've been hard done by. So dealing with that conflict is definitely kind of, I guess there are lots of things you can control, like posting on Instagram and getting lots of likes and being on trend. That's something you can practice and work at. People are forever unpredictable. So I don't know if I could tell anybody, fully final advice on how to tackle it, other than to be prepared to be surprised and deal with challenges, because the people part is one you can't process. Although with AI coming along, maybe a little bit.
Well, that's the next iteration, isn't it? It's the memory bit of AI, which is on the way next. So now,
can I ask you a question, Andy, if I may, because I'm genuinely curious about it, and I feel that as far as high performing humans go, you deserve your shot in the spotlight. What is it that drives you? Do you, I was talking about some people come from nothing and got to rewire. Some people grew up around influencers. Some people are keeping up with the Joneses. You work your ass off. You're doing live LinkedIn streams at 11 p.m. on Tuesday nights. Like you're one of the most high prolific output people I know. What is it that makes you keep getting up every day?
I think it's an interesting one, because I think you can be driven by two things, right? And one of them's great and one of them's shit. And we both have the ability to be driven by both, right? So so most of the time I try my hardest, but I'm human, right? To be driven by a purpose of wanting to serve, right? Of wanting to serve and help and assist other people. Like the purpose of this podcast is to make high performance more accessible to more people, right? But there's always going to be that drive that can creep in where it's for self as well.
Yeah.
Now, and I know, and I can feel it pretty quickly as to which drive mode I'm in. And if I'm in a me mode, then it's generally not going to be the best version of me, right? Because it's artificially created. I'm trying to create. It's kind of like inventors that try and invent solutions for problems that don't exist, which is what a lot of software firms do and whatnot, right? They don't fix a problem. They make a solution and then try and find a problem for it, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the sort of they're the two drives that I tend to go to. But realistically, in terms of the energy to have the output that I have, I guess part of it is because I suppose you don't want to let anybody down, right? I suppose that's part of it. You don't want to let anybody down, and that's obviously part of making sure that people know that you're there. I think is really important. That's why I put out as much content as I put out, because I want everybody to know that I'm around if you need me, right? It's not a case of I'm here for your business. I genuinely think of it as I'm here. If you need us, give us a yell. I'm around, reach out, that sort of stuff. That's really my drive with that. But at the same time,
selfless.
Oh, but I think that it can be to your detriment. I think that's probably why I ended up with some mental health problems like I did, because of the fact that you can be too selfless. I think there is such a thing as being too selfless. And so that me drive that I mentioned before, there's no, and this is the trick. If you can have that blend, that you are fixing someone's problem, but there's that extra little bit of energy to make sure that you hit the home run. So because you know what it could mean for you moving down the track as well, there's no harm in that. But as long as the original drive is that one of service, that's the main thing. And then if you get some benefits off the back of it, wonderful. There's
interesting.
No harm.
I got to commend you on your consistency there. You're always serving, giving, helping people. I've heard a lot of people say it. I believe it when you say it. I'm pretty me driven.
Yeah, and
Yours.
but you know what? But there's no harm in that, right? There's no harm in that, and I think what you mentioned earlier about asking, not being able to process when someone's happy with a slightly slower paced existence, right? That's, and you can't process that. You're looking at it going, shit, there's all this stuff, there's all this amazing world and experience and all this great stuff, shiny things and whatnot that you can go for. Why wouldn't you? Um, and there's no harm in that, right? There's absolutely, and I think this is where high performance is truly subjective. It is
Definitely.
truly a subjective being, and and
Mm.
and this is why I want to get people like you on, because there's all sorts of people at different parts of the spectrum. One thing that I will always value in someone like yourself is that, not that you are causing any offense, not that anyone's going to have a problem with it, but it's the fact that you are completely, um, not unashamed, but you are completely happy with who you are,
Do
right?
my best. Yeah.
You're completely happy with how you roll, and I think that's a really critical piece to the happiness element of
Mm.
of being a high performance human. Is you can't possibly look to achieve anything of any particular note within the context of your life without being happy, without being comfortable in who you are, because otherwise uh, anything that you try and put out there, anything that you try and articulate and whatnot, humans have got this inherent bullshit radar. We do.
Sure.
Everybody's got one, and you
Yeah.
know when something's legit and something's not. And ultimately, I think unless you know who you are, then understanding how you're going to be portrayed becomes almost impossible task.
Yes.
So anyway, back to you, my friend. So, um, you're an ambitious lad. What does, if we were, because the world's moving at such a pace, right? And I think one challenge that a lot of people have is that they wonder whether it's worth even starting, because by the time they get to a point, the world would have shifted again,
Mm.
right? So,
Yeah.
in your perspective, when we're looking at Josh's next 5 years, for example, because we had you mentioned something that was very, very interesting just before we kicked off, which is that you've hit 35 and the balance of focus is slowly starting to tilt in a different direction, right? Because
Mm.
your priorities perhaps changing a little bit and what have you. So next 5 years for someone like yourself, man, who loves going for the big things, but is all of a sudden starting to realize that your eyes are starting to widen to different elements of life, right? You've
Mm-hmm.
got engaged to the incredible Beck, who is worth your time and then some, right?
Thanks, man.
Absolute star. So what does the next 5 years look like for someone like you?
I feel like maybe as you get older, you work smarter, not harder.
Mm,
I think I've set myself up relatively well. I guess one thing you were saying, when should you get started? By the time you get there, will things have moved past? I guess you just can't get time back. So if you've done 10 years of hard yards and someone else is thinking, oh, I might try and start a business, you cannot eclipse that.
mm.
So next 5 years, love to sell my company for millions and millions of dollars, get time back on my side, because I met an entrepreneur the other day who looks like he's dominating. He runs a recruitment agency, and they started 3 years ago, and their company's bigger than mine already. And I kind of said, what's your secret? And he said, I just work really, really, really hard.
Mm.
And I thought, yeah, I guess I do that too. I don't complain when I'm up at midnight every second night sending emails. And so I guess, to answer your question, I think really putting in the hard yards while I still have the energy. I feel like I'll have kids in a couple of years, and I'm sure you can attest that your priorities shift then. So if in 5 years from now, I'll be your age. And if I was exited from this and then focusing on, I don't know, investing, consulting, advising, and being head of sitting on a beach in Fiji, that's the current trajectory.
I love it how your key focus, pay attention to that, gang, because this is a guy who has been driven to succeed his whole life. But the biggest thing that he talked about in his next 5 years is winning back time, is winning the ability to control his time. That is something for your notes, gang, because it's like, there's so many people that have highlighted this, right? You can always go and make more money, but you can never go and make more time. And I know, Josh only being 35, people's life expectations are growing a lot and exponentially almost. And for someone like Josh, he probably has got enough energy to last until he was like 90 anyway. But the fact that at 35, he's already looking at how he can earn more time in his life to have more, to have that freedom. And it's interesting. You used the word freedom just very fleetingly a little bit ago, but it's freedom that guys and girls, or people like yourself, are really trying to strive for, right? I want to ask, right, and this is going to be a bit of a curveball of a question.
Ready for it.
Freedom from what?
Have you ever heard that, just in entrepreneurship, that it's not uncommon that you think you're running a company, but you've really just built yourself a job, which I think is true for any company that you're running. So as it stands, I have to show up every day. I don't, but like metaphorically, being the first one in the office and the last to leave, I'm the person who needs to solve the big problems and have the tricky chats with the biggest clients. So things are going well, but I've effectively built myself just a really high pressure, high paying job. So yeah, freedom from having to do anything. Fuck you money is a term. I don't know if we're allowed to swear on and still be Spotify approved. But like just being able to do what you want. If you want to wake up on a Monday and go play golf, I don't play a lot of golf, but do whatever you want. Yeah. Just being able to do it, because I have to do a bunch of stuff I don't want to still.
Now, this is where it leads into something that I think a lot of people in that sort of 22 or 18 or 16 really to 35, 40-year-old age bracket. This is something that so many people want to try and achieve, and they see the highlight reels and whatnot, and they don't see the chasm of effort that is required in order to get anywhere near that side of the river, right?
Right.
Now, and this is where this is where I'm really glad that we've come to this point in the conversation, because and FYI, you've got to make sure that you follow Josh, because the way that he goes about his game, it just makes you feel happy about yourself. But I want to dig into this with you, because like we've agreed, it's a highlight reel, right? And this is where a lot of society they've become addicted to other people's highlight reels instead of wanting to go and get their own. Right. And the ease at which they can consume highlight reels makes it almost unidentifiable for them to be actually go and get it themselves, because they're almost living vicariously through them, which is almost becoming good enough for a lot of people.
Yeah, I agree.
So say, for example, right, knowing social media like you do, because social media, it's not social media's fault. Social media is just exposing us for the society that we are, right? If I could rewind you, mate, knowing the stuff that you know about socials and how it's consumed and how it can create addictions and how it can create success and all of the good stuff and bad stuff, right? If we were winding you back to 20 years old, you're seeing all this stuff, right? How would you manage, or what say 2 or 3 things that you would do to make sure that you stayed focused on what you wanted to do with all of the noise that's kicking around?
Yeah, good question. I would say one thing is, once you start something, you're committed to keep it going. You said you don't want to let people down, right? No matter what business you start, if you have a client or an employee, all of a sudden you have an obligation, and that's a healthy way to make sure you don't drop off or forget or become undisciplined. So I would definitely say it was a happy accident for me, but I was pretty unreliable in my mid-20s. And so starting something that you're accountable to is a huge trick. It's like having a gym partner, right? What else would I do? My old man gave me some advice that around when I was 20 that helped tremendously. I said, don't you get tired of clients and problems and staff and meetings and just running a company. It looks like it's really complicated and stressful. And he said, I just don't think about it that much. I just show up every day. And I stuck with that. I think the most successful things aren't this incredible invention or a new app that makes you a billionaire. It's boring businesses that people stick at for a long time. So I definitely think just being aware that 10 years is a lot of time to be doing something, and it won't be fun the whole time, but at the end of it, you'll look back and say that was good. And that's probably my best stuff. I'll be making out more. I'm big on lists, make a lot of whiteboards and a lot of phone note lists, and just am always thinking of what else I could do and what's a good idea or what's a restaurant I should take my partner to. I just am always listing and trying to think of more. And then once you've got a list, it's a lot easier from there to execute the steps. Hard to think of the idea and the execution at the same time. So I divide and conquer that.
I like that, because I think one symptom of this age demographic, I think a symptom that's holding them back is, like I mentioned to you before we started, it's the fact that they have too much choice.
Yeah, I feel a bit of that too. I'm sure you do.
Way too much choice, right? Way too much choice. And I know that sounds really simple, gang, but write this down at the top of your next list. Keep making lists. It sounds really simple, Josh, but I'm so glad that you've just blurted that out, because while we have all of these options in our head and we keep seeing more, and we see more and more every day, because that's how social media is designed, to keep throwing more stuff at you, right? Then as long as it's swimming around in your head, you'll never get anything done. Getting it out of your head and into reality via a pen and a bit of paper actually makes it feel like, right, is that actually something that can be in my world? Yeah. Because I've written it down and it's in my world. That's in my world now as a note on a bit of paper. Now, can I actually make that happen? And I think bringing it from the virtual into the real via a list, gang, this sounds so simple. My God, I think this is probably worth listening to the episode for just for this bit.
I agree.
This is mental. This is so
profound.
Good.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
By writing a list, you take something from the virtual into the real, and then you are allowed to then process it in a way that makes you realize whether it's in or out of your life. That's wicked. That's so good.
If I think back, that's kind of been my process to success from day one. Writing lists and doing stuff on them, and you never finish the list, and you never get as much done as you think you will. And sometimes you decide later that you're just actually that was a bad idea. But I agree.
How many times have you written something down on your list and gone, "Yeah, nah, man, what the fuck were you thinking?"
Often, but also my process is, because I guess you're in different mental and emotional states throughout different days and weeks and months and years. So I kind of say to myself, if it was a good idea to me at one point to write it down, then I'm just doing it. It's like going to the gym, right? If you write on the list, I'm going on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Friday rolls around, it's raining, you're tired, you can't be bothered, and you go, nah, I already wrote that down. That's part of the plan.
Yeah.
Don't think, just do it.
Yeah, nice, man. Look, thank you. That in itself is worth its weight of this episode, team. So make sure you start writing lists down and bringing some of these virtual ideas into a reality in some form and way, shape, or form. At least get them written down so you get them out of your head onto paper, and then it allows you to process them in the context of your own world. Now, Josh, I'm conscious that you are a very busy boy, my friend, and I've got to make sure I get you away on time. So I've got one last question for you, big guy.
Please hit me.
One last question.
I got time as well.
I've been asking a few more people. I've been asking a few people more recently, and it's really starting to come up with some really good answers. In your journey towards achieving high performance in the context of your world, what do you think is right now, as of this moment, what do you think is the one thing missing from your game that is preventing you from achieving the level of high performance that you want to get to?
There are dozens of things. We talked before about self-awareness being key. So I'm the first to admit that I am as flawed, if not more than most. What is the one thing I'm missing? I am just not disciplined enough. I think that dopamine overdose via social media and Kardashians and Netflix is a problem that we all deal with. So I am forever not fulfilling my potential by staying focused and disciplined enough to do the things I know I should. You know, I like the gym metaphor. It's when you sit on the couch and you go, fuck it, I'm not going to the gym. I can't be bothered. It is raining. I am tired. I did go earlier this week, and you just don't do it. I look up to, David Goggins is an extreme example, that American, Iron Man guy. But I really, that type of like mental fortitude some people seem to have, that's just like no excuses, getting stuff done. If I was more disciplined, I would get a lot more done.
And that's really interesting thing to end on, team, is that, Josh is a successful lad and he's living the life that he wants to live, and he's living it by design, right? It's not like he runs with military precision. He has human moments. He does eat ice cream. He does bang his toe on the bloody coffee table every now and then, right? And this is one of the key things that stops a lot of people from going for a higher level of performance, because they feel that they do human things that these other magical, whimsical unicorn type people just simply do not do. What Josh just said then, gang, please marinate on that, because someone that's running a 20-person business in a very, very tough industry to stay afloat in, and to stay relevant in, with all the competitiveness and whatnot that comes with social media, and for him to be in a position that he's in and still have those moments where he just can't be asked, and therefore he just doesn't do, or he does end up going down the scrolling sort of black hole of doom, because of what he does and whatnot.
Definitely.
Even everybody does it, man. No one's devoid of any of this, right? So as long as we've got two legs, as long as we've got legs, arms, and a beating heart, then you know what I mean? We're all going to have these sorts of problems in some way, shape, or form. Josh, man, you're a joy to chat to, man. You're an absolute joy. You always got that smile on your face, which makes me want to smile, and I love it. And I really like the simplicity that you see things, and that you have this energy that is undeniable, gang. I would highly encourage that you follow him. Highly encourage that you connect with him if you want to. He's a great guy to connect with, and an absolute joy to have an association with. So, Josh, thank you so much for your time, man.
My pleasure. I have always enjoyed talking to you, Andy. You've got some magic power in you that I don't know if I can put my finger on, but your high energy, your output is good. We haven't spoken in too long, so please promise me that you'll come past our office next time you go into boxing training before your big fight.
100%, man. Will do. Team, I hope you got some value out of this. I sure as hell did. And until next time, please stay safe, healthy, happy, and we'll see you on the next episode of the High Performance Human Podcast. Take care.